The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India. I see the Lord took me into India. There's a very big distress there. You see a lot of people swarming into the hospital. I see the lack of equipment. Now there is no equipment. The doctors are running up and down, and many people flooding into the hospital.
This is an ABC News.
But perhaps there is no nation on earth with a bigger crisis than India. They are on track to overtake the U.S. as the nation with the most cases worldwide.
More than 100,000 deaths.
This situation is unlike anything which we have seen ever before.
Bodies lying in wards packed with patients. Wards used as morgue to store bodies.
A shocker from Mumbai. A video posted on Twitter by BJP MLA Nitesh Rane shows coronavirus patients in a hospital ward lying next to corpses wrapped in body bags. Some patients have family members attending to them, apparently ignoring bodies right behind them. In a disturbing video that emerged on Tuesday, 8 bodies of coronavirus victims were wrapped in plastic and dumped into a common pit in Karnataka's Bellary district. Officials, while maintaining that the bodies were wrapped in plastic as per rules, said that the inhumane treatment will be probed. Chief Minister B.S. Yediyurappa termed the behavior of the staff inhuman and painful.
The disturbing visuals that have gone viral on social media. You can see shots on our screens at the moment of a group of men in hazmat suits dumping body bags into a huge pit. What really is going on?
The Lord took me into India. There's a very big distress there. You see a lot of people swarming into the hospital. The doctors are running up and down, and many people flooding into the hospital.
India has become the second worst hit country by the coronavirus pandemic in the world. This is also the highest one-day surge recorded anywhere in the world. 90,800 people have been tested positive for the lethal virus in the last 24 hours.
After lapses at Cooper Hospital and Nair Hospital, now another hospital, a video from a hospital in Sion has gone viral on social media. What it shows is how COVID patients are being treated in the same ward where lying only few inches away from them are dead bodies. Yes, these are dead corpses on the bed, even as nurses are walking up and down past these corpses, the ward checking up on COVID patients.
The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India. I see the Lord took me into India. There's a very big distress there. The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India. The Lord took me into India. There's a very big distress there.
The capital is being ravaged at a frightening speed. With every pyre that burns, India's self-belief is dying. Each funeral is a story of personal loss and national shame.
And the eyes of the world are on the faraway nation of India, where the virus is said to be swallowing people. Mass cremations are taking place in parking lots because crematoriums are overwhelmed. Some of the images coming out of India are apocalyptic.
The situation in India is beyond heartbreaking.
Across the city, smoke rises up from a makeshift crematorium that's struggling to keep up with the inflow of arriving bodies.
48 साल अवस्था हो गई लाइफ में ऐसा दृश्य भयावह हमने कभी नहीं देखा है। सोचा भी नहीं था कि एक साथ 20-22 डेड बॉडी जल रही हैं, 15-20 लाइन में हैं, जो कि इसके क्या गवर्नमेंट कर रही गई इसमें हाँ आज भी भारत
Through the night, the pyres burn, the flames piercing the dark sky. In this Kanpur crematorium, as COVID takes its deathly toll, a never-ending day and an endless nightmare for relatives.
The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India. The Lord took me into India. There's a very big distress there.
Tragedy took place where we lost 20 precious lives. The 20s are not, madam, just a statistical number. They are all human beings. They were my patients. They were my responsibility. They came on faith of Dr. Baruja and Jeff Golden Hospital.
Crematoriums are running out of space too. Makeshift funeral pyres burn around the clock. The death toll in parts of India, both metropolitan and rural, is staggering. And worse still, the number of lives lost here so far is almost certainly vastly underreported.
is CNN Breaking News.
At the Simapuri crematorium, the loss weighs heavily in the smoldering air, and the dead are piling up.
There are bodies literally everywhere you turn here. I've honestly never seen anything quite like it. And the organizers say that pre-COVID, they might cremate 7 or 8 people a day. Today alone, they've already cremated 55 bodies, and it's not even lunchtime.
Just months ago, India's leadership boasted that the country had effectively defeated COVID. Now it has set global records for new cases as a terrifying second wave ravages the country. Jitender Singh Shunti says he and his men don't even stop to take breaks. And still, they can barely cope with the flow. A volunteer approaches. They've run out of tables for the bodies, he says, then adds that his mother died from COVID the night before. So India's capital continues to burn, suffocated by the rampant spread of this deadly virus. A city and a country brought to its knees, praying for respite.
The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India. The Lord took me into India. There's a very big distress there.
Mass cremations begin in India as coronavirus deaths in the capital of New Delhi soar. If this continues, they say they would have no other choice but to cremate bodies on the road.
There probably is no more graphic an illustration of just how bad the coronavirus crisis is hitting India than this. This is a makeshift crematorium. It's actually not meant to exist. This has been set up by the residents around here who cannot cope with the number of dead. Behind me are all the funeral pyres that represent a mother, a father, a daughter, a son, an uncle, a loved one to someone, a friend to someone. Each one of those fires is a coronavirus death. And we have been watching in just the last few minutes alone, they've been coming in virtually every second. They simply can't cope. And this is not one of the official funeral sites. This is an ad hoc one.
कोई गरीब आदमी हो तो कैसे सरवाइव कर पाएगा। आज जो हम लाश अपनी जो ससुर साहब का लाश जो जला रहे हैं, इसके लिए हमको 12,000 रुपया पे करना पड़ा है। और इतना ही नहीं, पैसा तो ले ही लिया, लाश वैसे कुछ लकड़ियां डाल करके जला करके चल दिया। फिर हम उनको ढूंढ रहे हैं कि भाई लाश जली ही नहीं है, 4 घंटा हो गया, कहाँ आए आप? तो बड़ी मुश्किल से फिर उनको पकड़ कर लाए, तो ये 4 लकड़ी उन्होंने लगाई है और अभी तक लाश जल नहीं पाई है और कोई देखने वाला नहीं है।
The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India. The Lord took me into a hospital in India. There's a very big distress there. The doctors are running up and down and many people flooding into the hospital.
At this crematorium in Delhi, the bodies lie in the heat for up to 20 hours. And there are more waiting behind these in parked cars driven by grieving relatives. The funeral pyres are so busy that families crisscross India's capital looking for any available space, some of them renting fridges to stop their loved ones from decaying. At another crematorium in the city, there are at least ambulances available to ferry the dead, though they are piled high inside. And then another queue for hours before they can be burned. India's official death toll is nearly 200,000 now, and these fires are constant, perhaps the most damning indictment.
The local health inspector ordered a public park to build 20 additional cremation platforms, but it's still not enough.
These are all the remains of human beings who've been unable to be properly mourned by their families and friends, who've been taken mostly, almost entirely, we're told, victims of the COVID pandemic that is rapidly coming to the stage of representing something that is almost biblical in scale here.
We can just see behind you so many piles burning. Just give us a sense of what you're seeing, and again, a warning to our viewers that you might find some of these images disturbing.
Well, Linda, just in this area alone, it's about the size of 3/4 of a football pitch. There are close to 50 pyres burning. This crematorium believed it would probably process about 150 bodies today. There's estimated about 600 people dying every day here in New Delhi, but the truth of the matter is the numbers must be much higher. In this crematorium, the dead actually have to join a queue before they can be seen, before they can be given their last rites. People accompanying them have to take a ticket, like you would going to see the doctor or getting a bank appointment, wait their turn, and then they will be brought out to one of these locations. Ghee, which is a butter-like oil substance, poured on them, the wood piled on top, and they're given their last rites. Very often
It is important to show the world this brutal reality, because there are so many scenes like this, temporary crematoriums set up in parking lots and parks.
The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India. The Lord took me into India. There's a very big distress there. You see a lot of people swarming into the hospital. I see the lack of equipment now. There's no equipment. The doctors are running up and down, and many people flooding into the hospital.
A capital on its knees.
Consecutive day, India has set a global record for daily infections and deaths. But health experts believe the real numbers could be much higher. For every 200 patients, only one doctor was available.
So we are struggling.
So many like her are putting in all they can.
India's healthcare system is at a breaking point. Unable to cope with the scale of the crisis, its people left to fend for themselves.
The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India. The Lord took me into India. There's a very big distress there. You see a lot of people swarming into the hospital. I see the lack of equipment now. There's no equipment. The doctors are running up and down, and many people flooding into the hospital.
This is CNN Breaking News.
India is experiencing the world's worst coronavirus outbreak. Today is the 5th day with more than 3,000 reported deaths in that country. Even as help pours into India from the U.S. and other countries, India is struggling to give basic medical care to those who need it. CNN's chief international correspondent, Clarissa Ward, is live for us in New Delhi. She went to India's most populous state, Uttar Pradesh, to see the crisis firsthand. And Clarissa, we should warn our viewers that what you're about to share with us is really upsetting at times. Tell us what you saw.
It really is, Jake. We visited a government-run hospital in Uttar Pradesh, some 200 million people living in that state. It's one of the hardest hit states, and the scenes we saw were absolutely harrowing. A man wails in anguish, but no one is listening. His cry, just one of many at this hospital in Uttar Pradesh state. Inside the entrance, his son Deepak is fighting for his life. Gasping for air, his body convulsing. There are no doctors attending to him. The handful of medical staff working in this ward are stretched thin to breaking point.
This hospital is completely overwhelmed. The doctors say that they have about 55 beds, and currently they're treating more than 100 patients. And you can see people are literally just lying on the floor, desperately hoping to get some medical attention.
32-year-old Kavita says she's been here for 4 days, begging for oxygen that has not come. I'm getting anxious, she says. No one is listening to me here.
Are you struggling to breathe?
I'm unable to breathe freely, she tells us. No one is taking care of me. In the next room, more than 20 patients are packed in tightly. This is what now passes for the intensive care unit. Family members have taken on the role of primary carers, where medical staff are simply unavailable. Suddenly, there is a commotion. Will someone please call the doctor? This man shouts. His mother, 55-year-old Rajbala, appears to be slipping away. Her sons work furiously to revive her. A doctor comes in and tells them to stop crowding her. But the family is inconsolable. We've been here for 6 days, and only today we got the ventilator for my mother, he tells us. The oxygen is out. We had to bring an oxygen cylinder. It's a story we hear again and again. One man approaches us pleading. His wife can't get a bed. No one's listening to me. I've tried everything, he says. Please help me or she will die.
I'm not a doctor. I'm so sorry. I can't help you.
Another man tells us his wife is struggling to breathe outside. They won't let her in. We spot the hospital administrator and ask him what's going on. Says they are desperately short of staff. Those who do work here risk becoming patients themselves. These men tell us they move a dozen bodies a day. We hear screams coming from the ICU. Rajbala has flatlined again. Her son desperately pumps her chest. A doctor comes in. He takes her pulse. But it's too late. This time, there is no point in trying to resuscitate her. The agony of her sons is shared by so many in this country. Failed by a healthcare system on the brink of collapse, and a government accused of mismanaging this crisis. Rajbala's body is left for nearly an hour before it is finally moved. And you see it there, Jake. I mean, shortages of everything, shortages of beds, shortages of drugs, shortages of oxygen, but perhaps the most pronounced shortage that we saw on the ground was a shortage of medical personnel. 5 doctors and nurses were responsible for looking after all those more than 100 people in that COVID ward. And today, the Indian government has come out and said that they are actually going to draft in final year medical students to try to backfill some of the void and help tackle this crisis. But listen, it's going to be an uphill battle, Jake, and the peak hasn't even hit yet of this vicious second wave.
The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India. The Lord took me into India. There's a very big distress there. You see a lot of people swarming into the hospital. I see the lack of equipment. Now there's no equipment. The doctors are running up and down, and many people flooding into the hospital.
The waiting room at the Guru Tegh Bahadur Public Hospital is a sea of desperation, crammed with people defying Delhi's strict lockdown to seek help.
Hospitals are being forced to turn away the sick and dying.
Recently in Delhi, a group of people turned on medics and security guards at a hospital after they discovered a 67-year-old relative was denied an ICU bed and instead died in a hospital waiting room. Similar scenes are playing out across the country. There's been anger south of Delhi when people have turned up at a hospital only to discover their relatives have died because there is not enough oxygen. Doctors say they don't have oxygen, they don't have beds, and they don't have medicines.
What do I do? Once there is no bed here, no physical space, as you can see, to put another trolley, what do we do? We can only do that much.
मेरे सामने तड़प के ऑक्सीजन की मशीन बंद हो गई, कुछ नहीं आ रहा था, मेरे सामने तड़प के खत्म हुए.
A hospital in the western city of Bhavnagar. These are COVID patients and there are no doctors to look at them, says the man filming the video.
पेशेंट यहाँ पे नीचे लेके लेटा हुआ है, कचरा वहाँ पे पड़ा हुआ है.
ये डेड बॉडी कल शाम से यहाँ पे.
India's healthcare system is crumbling under the pressure of a massive COVID-19 outbreak that's killing thousands of people each day. Hospitals in the Indian capital of New Delhi have reached capacity. There is simply no space left to treat patients. As cars are converted to beds and sidewalks to morgues, health officials are telling families they'll need to obtain their own oxygen and medicine. Supplies have run out.
As India struggles with a catastrophic second wave, heartbreaking scenes playing out outside hospitals in the national capital. The tragic human face of the COVID crisis visible in the folded hands, desperate cries for help, and the heart-wrenching screams when all is lost. Meanwhile, another female patient with low oxygen passed away after she was brought to the GTP hospital. While the doctor tried to save her by giving her CPR, patients could be seen lying outside the emergency ward with people pleading hospital staff to provide their loved ones with oxygen masks. India's healthcare system is under severe stress.
India's COVID-19 emergency reaches critical levels. Hospitals are out of beds and oxygen, and crematoriums don't have space for the dead. Overwhelmed hospitals are turning away the critically ill.
I'm a health worker, but if someone dies in my family, I won't even be able to say final goodbyes.
The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India. The Lord took me into India. There's a very big distress there. You see a lot of people swarming into the hospital. I see the lack of equipment. Now there's no equipment. The doctors are running up and down, and many people flooding into the hospital.
Kelly, a tornado. That's how a doctor in India described the situation to me this morning.
NDTV 24/7.
We probably, you see, we as a doctor, we as a hospital, we are supposed to give life. If we cannot give them oxygen even, what is the situation? When patient comes to, patient will die. Patient will die. They are trying to help, but there is no oxygen, sir. There is no oxygen. We know this.
At this hospital on Delhi's outskirts, the patients are gasping for oxygen. 100 more are waiting outside, despite being told there's not enough gas or beds. Their best hope is that if somebody here dies, then that will free up a place.
साढ़े 12 बजे के आसपास एक पेशेंट बहुत सीरियस अवस्था में आया था। उसका ऑक्सीजन सैचुरेशन 30% था। 8 दिन से बुखार, खांसी और सांस लेने में तकलीफ थी और प्राइवेट में डॉक्टर हक का इलाज करा रहा था। यहाँ जैसे ही पेशेंट आया, मैंने उसको एक्सप्लेन कर दिया साथ वालों को, देखो हालत बहुत खराब है, कुछ नहीं हो सकता। एक भी बेड उपलब्ध नहीं था अस्पताल में और कहीं बाहर शिफ्ट नहीं हो सकता। मैंने वहीं रह के उसको जितनी मेहनत कर सकते इमरजेंसी में मेहनत करी। वो तो इंसान है, डॉक्टर है। अब वो जैसे ही खत्म हुआ, मैं वहीं था। खत्म होने के बाद पता नहीं कहां से कुछ बाहरी लोग आ गए और 20 लोगों के सामने मेरे साथ इतना बुरा दुर्व्यवहार किया है कि मैं इतना मानसिक रूप से व्यथित हूं। मैं रो रहा हूं, मुझे नौकरी नहीं करना। अगर की गालियां बर्दाश्त नहीं कर सकता। मेरी गलती, मुझे 50 जूते मान लो गाली दे दो, मुझे मंजूर है। बगैर गलती के इस तरह लोग बाहर से आएंगे तो रोज कोरोना में डेथ होना। आज के दिन गाली दी, कल के दिन मारेंगे, कोई चाकूदार दे पेट में। मुझे नहीं करना दादा ऐसी नौकरी। मैंने रिजाइन कर दिया है आज से और कल से मैं घर बैठूंगा। दादा मैं नहीं करना।
22-year-old Vishwaroop Sharma believes he is living in hell. 3 days ago, he drove his critically ill father, who contracted COVID, to a Delhi hospital and pleaded for help. With no beds, no oxygen, they were forced to wait outside.
He was saying that I am going, I won't be able to breathe, I need something, I need more medicines, but nothing is provided to him. And he died in front of me.
Overwhelmed hospitals have been the worst case COVID scenario for most nations. But this is horror on another scale entirely. The car park of a temple, where families who've been turned away from emergency rooms take their dying.
और 5 मिनट देखो, 85 है सर। आप थोड़ी देर उनको रोको तो सही, देखो तो सही कि स्टेबल हो रहा नहीं हो रहा। ऑक्सीजन दवा नहीं होती। इतना घबराओ मत, पैनिक मत करो।
These are some of the most distressing scenes we've witnessed during the course of our reporting. And this isn't even a hospital. It's a Sikh temple where they're just helping out with oxygen and basic care. It's 45 degrees and it's so hot that the volunteers cannot even wear their PPEs. And people just keep coming and coming and coming. And there's just no room at any of the local hospitals for the people who are here. At least 12 people die outside this temple every day. India's deadly second wave has forced the nation's supply chain of oxygen far beyond its limit. Many of those helping out are testing positive for COVID themselves. He puts his faith in his temple.
देखो साड़ी सरकार ये बैठी है, बाबा नानक। ਅਸੀਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਮੰਨਦੇ। ਸਾਡੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ ਬਾਬਾ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੈ, ਉਹਨੇ ਲੰਗਰ ਚਲਾਇਆ ਸੀ 500 ਸਾਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ।
The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India. The Lord took me into India. There's a very big distress there. You see a lot of people swarming into the hospital. I see the lack of equipment now. There is no equipment. The doctors are running up and down, and many people flooding into the hospital. The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India. The Lord took me into a hospital in India. There's a very big distress there. The doctors are running up and down, and many people flooding into the hospital.